If a player cleans his ball during play of a hole, except on the putting green, he shall incur a penalty of 1 stroke. That's a rule, Jerry.
But it's just a friendly game. Why do you always have to be such a stickler?
Because that's the way I was raised.
Welcome to Spirit of the Game, brought to you by the Colorado Golf Association. Here are your hosts, Ed Mate and Lewis Harry.
Okay, welcome back to another edition of the Spirit of the Game. I'm so excited to welcome in another special guest who knows a heck of a lot more about the rules of golf than I do, but that's not saying much. Brian Claar, longtime PGA Rules official. Welcome.
Good to be here. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to chat.
Awesome. Well, when we set this up, I thought you were living in Colorado, and I was mistaken. You were here for a while, and now you're in Texas. But before we get to that, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for the PGA Tour and how you got there.
All right. Well, I was raised pretty much in Southern Connecticut, and then went to college at the University of Tampa. Once I found the warm weather, I found out that's where I needed to be. And worked as an assistant golf professional for a couple of years, aspiring to play the tour. And I somehow snuck through the qualifying school in the winter of '85 for '86. So I played the tour. I played, I think, close to 400 PGA Tour events. And then in '03, and I was all exempt for 7 or 8 years, I think. And then I was in the dreaded 125 to 150 category where I was getting some starts and kept making it to the finals of Q school and kept failing miserably. So in '03, I was in my early 40s, and I said, you know what, it's time to start another career. And I wanted to stay in golf. And my friend Dillard Pruitt, who had gone that same route, I spoke to him, and he said, it's great. You're in golf, you're around great people. And here I am 23 years later.
Wow. What was your biggest accomplishment on the PGA Tour? What are you most proud of? Other than that's a pretty good career you had.
Well, yeah, I always tell everybody, because I'm getting to the age where no one knows who I am anymore, which is not bad. I said, if I was a baseball player, I was about a 250 hitter, the second baseman that, whatever. But probably, '86, I was rookie of the year. I came out of a small Division II school, no amateur career. No one had really, I wasn't a name. And, it was the same year Davis Love came out. And so that's probably the thing I'm most proud of in terms of, besides that, I did finish 5th in the U.S. Open in 1989 and up at Oak Hill in Rochester. And that was pretty special too.
Well, you're very modest. That's a pretty amazing thing too. And it's funny because was Dillard Pruitt kind of the first of his kind of a PGA Tour player who became a rules official? That's sort of the way or was there others ahead of him?
Well, Mark Slugger played the tour a little bit. Mike Shea played the tour a little bit. But in my generation, yes, I know Steve Rintoul played for a while, and he's become obviously very involved in the rules. But yeah, Dillard was the one I spoke to.
Yeah. How do you think that helps you as a rules official? Do you think it's important? And I'm just talking specifically PGA Tour rules officiating, not being in a club or working at the amateur ranks. How has that helped you in doing your job?
Well, 2 things. Number one, I know what goes on inside the ropes. I know how upset and angry players can get, and I never take it personally when I give them some information or news they don't like. And the second part, which has really helped, is I think I come with some respect for the players, because the guys I'm dealing with now are all guys I've played against. And I'd like to think that I always acted correctly. And I think they respected me as a player, and they also understand that I know what they're going through. So I think moving right on into all of a sudden having to time them or giving them unfavorable rulings, I think I came with a little bit of respect that some other people not get, which maybe they'll yell at me a little less.
So you started working 23, you said 23 years as a rules official, is that right?
Yeah, 2003. In '02, I had played mostly on, back then it was the Nationwide, which is the Korn Ferry Tour now. And they were taking the top 25 to get your tour card. And I think I finished 28th. And I was more than frustrated. And I was talking to Jim Duncan, who was the term director on the nationwide tour back then. I said, hey, I'd like to come to work for you. And I was exempt to the finals of Q School. And I said, I'll prove to you how serious I am. I'm not going to go. So I didn't go. I took a huge risk. And thank goodness he hired me that next August when a position became available.
Amazing. Did you happen to play in what was then the Nike Tour event at Riverdale Dunes in the late 90s? Or what? I actually officiated that event. Maybe I gave you a bad ruling.
No, yeah, I missed it because of you. No, I did not play there. I didn't play in them all, but I played in quite a few, but no, I did not.
There was a couple there, and Stuart Sink won one of them. Pretty amazing. It was a very short-lived event. And what was really interesting to me was I was working for the PGA section, and they called us in to do a little kind of, I don't know that you guys do that anymore, where you ask for local help. And I was just like anybody else. I had full authority to give rulings, but I got a lot of players because I didn't have any credibility in their eyes. They wanted second opinions. As you can imagine, that probably doesn't surprise you.
I deal with a little bit of that now. Like I said, I'm 65 and I've worked the Players Championship. I usually work the US Open, and the Players Championship, I tell everyone, a couple of years ago, I was timing a certain individual, and this kid wore me out, just borderline yelling at me the entire length of the fifth hole, saying, do you realize how much money we're playing for out here? And, I don't know you, you don't me, but I'm really not that slow. Just biting my tongue, thinking, yes, I wish I had played for as much money as you had, because I have played in the Players Championship. So I totally understand that when they don't recognize you.
So have you ever lost it with a player where you like boiled over? Because you seem like a pretty calm guy, and what you just said, and being able to appreciate where they're coming from. But is there any moments where you're like, whoa, I kind of boiled over there?
I snapped one time. It takes a lot, but yeah, I snapped with I won't say his name, but a player older than me who was a US Open champion, who called for an official on the first hole because he had his mud on his golf ball. And he was in second to last place. And he berated one of my rules officials. I mean, you all should lose your job. You don't know what you're doing. You're idiots. And I boiled for about 3 holes. And I may have positioned myself right by the ropes on the third hole where he'd have to see me. And as soon as he said something, I went under the ropes, and I was like Earl Weaver with my hat backwards. And it escalated. It escalated. But you know what? I got some credit from my guys for sticking up for him. But I had to meet him in scoring and apologize. And 2 weeks later, he apologized. But yeah, I lost this.
Yeah. Well, I have too. Not nearly at that. I won't name names either, but we had a PGA champion that played in our section, and I can totally identify, and end of the year, worn out, just lost it. And good things came of it, because we kind of kissed and made up, so to speak. And I think a little respect was gained on both sides. I've had a little taste of being inside the ropes at US Senior Opens and a couple US Opens. And yeah, I've gotten an earful too, but my skin isn't as thick as yours, and I don't have any credibility. Zero. I have never won a tournament in my life. I haven't. So, well, listen. So,
going in, I know the players very well. So yeah. I know which ones may be less than civil. So I know what I'm getting into, and I know who to listen to, who not to listen to. So, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And it teaches you a lot about, what's amazing is being quiet. And just don't say anything. I don't know if you have any sort of life advice for people in dealing with confrontation. I hadn't really thought about this, but you guys are probably as good at that as, I guess, police officers and other, just sort of just being quiet. Is that something?
Yeah, you just let them go. And half the time they'll talk in circles, to get to where you want. I realize realize now you're not going to give me relief because you haven't said anything. Well, you answered your question.
Yeah.
But the worst part is when I open my mouth and then I go back and say, I wish I hadn't said that.
Yeah.
So yeah. What do they? Yeah, a closed mouth gathers no foot. So I like to try to stay quiet.
Yeah, that's very difficult for me. That's why I'm good for podcasting, I guess, or maybe not. One other thing on that front, and we last month we talked to Ken Tackett, which was a lot of fun, and I was watching. I think it was the European Tour one time, Golf Channel, and the official was called in, and the player wanted relief. I don't know if it was an embedded ball or what it was. And after a lengthy discussion, the official, and I can't remember who it was, said, "There's nothing I can do for you under the rules." And I thought, that's what a great line, because it's like I'm here to help, but I'm also here to apply the rules, and I can't do both. So I like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. When we're looking at golf courses all the time, we see things, okay, well, your nearest point of relief in this cart path might be in a bad area, but the whole golf course is like that. We had that at La Paloma in Tucson last week. And so we start coming up with things. Well, maybe we should put a DZ here. Maybe this isn't. And then we say, listen, we don't have to apologize for the rules. This is what the golf course gives us. If this is where it's going to take you, I'm sorry, you can play it off the cart path, but there's just so many things. So when we get talking in circles amongst the staff, we always say, hey, we don't have to apologize for the rules. Like you said, this is where the rules tell us. Everybody that hits here, this is what the rules tell us. So yeah, that's a great way to go.
Yeah. Going back to, I'm off script here. I have, so which is much more fun for both of us, I think. I wanted to ask you about mud on golf balls. You mentioned it, and I was watching Bay Hill, and Jason Day had a lie and had mud on his ball, and he hit it in the water. I don't think he hit it well. What is as a player, having played at the highest level, this is one I really struggle with personally, because I'm like, and it goes to lift, clean, in place, and there's a lot of particularly USGA types, and I would definitely put myself in that camp, who really feel playing the ball down is essential. And I got into this a little bit with Ken, but I just am curious, what is your personal view of mud on golf balls? Forget where we are, and how did you deal with that as a player, and then what do you make of it as a rules official?
Well, I'm probably a little more sympathetic because I hated it. They say, oh, if the mud's on the right, it's going to go left. Well, there's a pond over there, and you're not going to aim at the pond because the mud's going to pull it away from it. It's hard. I think we over irrigate in the United States anyway. Everybody wants lush green golf courses. We get this organic layer built up, and maybe I'm getting off topic, but it's hard, Ed. The newer golfers, Nicholas never wanted to touch it. Tom Kite never wanted to touch it. These newer guys, scream and yell if they get mud on their ball one time. I get it. I don't want to ever think I'm bigger than the game, and all of a sudden, yes, you should have a perfectly clean golf ball every time you play. It's a discussion we have all the time. If you're going to get 4 or 5 of them, we tend to put it in their hand. If you're just going to get 1 or 2, I'm sorry, deal with it. But they'll be arguing this when I'm in the grave, I promise. Like you said, it's such a hard area. It really is. One time, sorry, but what really broke my heart, I was officiating a Q school in Deerwood, Texas. And that was my first year, as a matter of fact. And I'm sitting on the side of this really narrow hole, and this kid hit it right down the middle. And we had some rain, and the flag was on the right side of the green. He couldn't have had a 9-iron in. I'm just watching. He hits it, and I'm kind of looking at the flag, and I see this over in this lake, 60 yards left of the green. His head went down, and this kid came up to me, and he missed by 1 going to the finals. It was the second stage, and he came up to me and said, did you guys ever think about playing lift, clean, in place? And here's a kid that's just paid $3,000, you know what I mean? Hit a perfect drive, and he had a 9-iron in the middle of the lake. And that really hit home. That's one incident, but it's hard, but I do have sympathy for it, I have to admit.
No, I appreciate that. And I honestly, do you think the modern player mud is even more exacerbated because of the swing speeds and ball speeds? And does the mud, I mean, that's, I'm asking you to be an aerospace engineer. I mean, is it as big a deal today, or is it a bigger deal, or is it's always been that way? Cause I got to tell you, as a less skilled player, I didn't, I was probably benefited from mud on my ball.
Well, I don't know. The guess is when you hit it, does the mud fly off and doesn't affect it? You go to Georgia and the Carolinas, you get that clay, that really hard stuff that stays on there. Then there's a dirty golf ball or a muddy golf ball.
Right.
So I don't know, but I've always equated it. Would you ever give a pitcher a baseball with mud on it and tell him to throw a strike?
Yeah.
It would drive him crazy. And I've always said a player would rather hit out of a 3-inch divot in the middle of the fairway than put a hunk of mud on the side of his golf ball. So at least he knows what it's going to do out of the divot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and as much money as they're playing for and what it means, there is a little bit of luck involved when you get a golf course where what I would consider you're getting excessive mud.
So really, to educate our listeners, because I think there's a lot of people out there that see lift, clean, and place and think it's because they think of it as preferred lies, winter rules. They can't play out of bad lies. It's really entirely a mud issue. Is that accurate?
No, not 100%.
Okay.
We used to do if, it's a Sunday, we're trying to finish and the golf course is saturated.
Yeah.
So if they want to take temporary water relief, sometimes the nearest point is in 4-inch rough. So we give them a club length to maybe go from more water to less water where we can finish, where we can actually finish. They can get their hands on it to get it in at least a little bit of a less wet lie to finish.
Right.
So that was a big part of it. But it's kind of morphed into more, unfortunately, well, whether it's unfortunate or not, more mud because it does drive the best players in the world.
Well, and even in that case, the temporary water case that you just mentioned, that's also not a result of, I think there's this idea in people's heads that, in the winter, you roll them over. When people play preferred lies, the average 18 handicap, it's because they don't want to play out of anything less than a perfect lie. Yeah. Not because there's mud on the ball. They can't even guarantee they're going to hit it. So it's really, I think, an important distinction and the vagaries that come, and that actually makes me more sympathetic, honestly, as I watch it and I hear about it, because I'm like, these are the best players in the world. Why can't they play it down? Well, the answer is because they're the best players in the world, they will hit it square. And you're just introducing knuckleballs so I get it. So let's stay with fairness for just a minute, which is a word that we always discuss in the rules parlance, and how you hand somebody a rule book and say, find me the word fair in there. And unless you see fairway, there is no such thing. And philosophically, I get that. And I generally agree with it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about golf. It is, that's what makes it such a compelling game. That's why it tests us to such a great degree, is you just don't know. But when it comes to divots and fairways, where do you sit on that one?
We've dealt with divots and fairways our whole life. I'm sorry. There's I think Greg Norman might have been one of the first ones that should be considered ground under repair. Well, and there's a very famous Hall of Famer on our tour who always says that. And my question is, well, when's a divot no longer a divot? All of a sudden you get one that's 3/4 grown in, come on. It's not that simple. Buried lies and bunkers and divots in the fairways, we've dealt with them our whole life. I hope they never change that. That's just, you're good enough to hit it out of a divot, in my opinion.
Very succinct answer, which I completely agree with. And I do think that no longer becomes golf. I know it pains you probably when you have to, as you said, let the players get their hands on the ball. We all want to see that. That's what they're so good at. But if you went that far, now all of a sudden, and I know this, I've done enough rules officiating, when a ball landed in the fairway when I was working it, I was like, good, I don't have to worry about being called into that, unless there was like temporary water. But now you're going to get called in every single time to interpret, is it a divot or not?
Divot is. Right.
Yeah.
What a divot is. The only thing that you got to watch is sometimes they overfill the divots on these golf courses. They're like little 8 million little mini bunkers out there.
Yeah.
So I always tell the guys less is more, less is better. Just a little bit. So maybe the ball will roll through it, but at least if they're in it, they can get the club on it. It's not like a puffed up much of sand. So I hope that'll never happen in my lifetime. I hope. That's part of the game.
Yeah. I remember Nicholas soapboxing on it as well. He definitely felt that. And again, we just did a rules video. Last one that we posted was a situation where I'm in the fairway and I'm trying to create interference from a nearby sprinkler head because my ball's in a divot. We kind of play this out and, how that works back and forth. It has to be reasonable. You can't be stretching it, but we got a couple that always prompts response. It's like, I hate that rule. And I ask all the time, do you think we should allow relief for a ball in a divot? And it's amazing to me how the overwhelming majority of people really feel. And when the USGA rewrote the rules in 2019, that was the number one comment from the public, was to allow relief for divots and fairways. And we tend to have these sort of one-upsmanship, comebacks. Like when somebody says, well, I hit my ball in the fairway, I should get a good lie. Well, what if it hit a tree, you shanked it, and it ricocheted into the fairway and into a divot? Did you hit a good shot? Do you deserve a good lie in that situation? Or you hit your ball in the rough and you got a perfect lie. Should you step on it? Yeah. Did you step on it because you didn't deserve it? And that honestly doesn't convince anybody and just makes them mad. But
that's the beauty of our game. An early tee time when there's no wind, a late tee time, the wind picks up, soft greens, hard greens, a good bounce, a bad bounce. That's the beauty of the game. There's so many things involved where, if you want to use the term luck, which I guess is what it is, that's what's so great about our game. And you should be good, especially at our level. You should be good enough to hit out of a divot. But anyway.
All right. So speaking of your level, we're 24 minutes in, and I've got to question 2. That's why I love these chats. But I promise I won't keep you longer than I promised. So my second question that I thought of as I was preparing for this is, what do you think? You've played on all levels. What's the difference between officiating on the Champions Tour versus the other tours?
I read your questions, and these guys, they don't call for everything. Like even TIOs, I'll see them if it's just physical. I'll see them do their own stuff. What I noticed on the other tours is they'll call for everything. And I get it, because it could be a pretty steep penalty if they get it in the wrong place or they do something they shouldn't be doing. But our guys will operate on their own a lot more than the younger kids, I've noticed. And believe it or not, our guys play faster too. They just
that I know that I've seen firsthand.
Yeah. They want to get on with it. They're not as. I mean, we got some aim point guys, which drives me crazy, but they're not out there taking forever on the greens. They trust their eyes. They've done it their whole life. That's just, and they get on with it. So those are probably the two things.
So speaking of aim point, I want you to elaborate on that one for a minute, and I'm going to ask you a question around it. And I'm jumping to question 4. If you could change one big rule or small rule, because this one really bugs me too. It's like the amount of time that golfers take to align that golf ball. And you think about the original 13 rules and the idea that you couldn't mark your way to the hole and you can't put a towel on the hillside to give yourself aim. Well, what's more important than giving yourself aim than having a line on the ball? And that one bugs if I could change one rule, that would be mine. And I don't know how you'd change it, but I would just love to get rid of. And I know aim point that would still be, I'm blurring lines here, but the alignment, the amount of time, the way they get those lines on the golf ball, so precise, and then holding the club up. And what are your thoughts on that? I think I know what you're going to say.
We've talked about that. That is one of my pet peeves. I wish, we used to kind of use the Titleist logo or whatever ball you used to just kind of generally, if it was a right to left, you kind of just generally put it out to the right, but you'd use the line on the back of your putter to the putter face. But this 18-inch putt. They put the line down, get up, and look it up. And it takes them 50 seconds to hit an 18-inch putt because of that line. As you can see, you get me all worked up over slow play.
I know. Well, I'm glad I'm not alone.
A couple of the other remind me to tell you one more thing about that, but a couple of the other things that I haven't had this happen yet, but if someone leaves a rake on the backside of a bunker and your ball hangs up and you move the rake and the ball rolls down and it won't stay anywhere, it's 2 to come out. I never, ever want to have to give that ruling because you can't push it in the sand, right? That one I don't understand. I wish, 1 to come out, which still stinks because someone left a rake where they're not supposed to, but 2 to come out. No one I know has had to have that ruling yet, but it probably will happen. And here's another one that drives me crazy, and I don't know how you fix it, but I worked the Players Championship a few years ago, and on the first hole, if you've ever played there, there's a tall, skinny palm tree right to the right front of the green. And I'm watching these 2 balls, flag stick was front right, hit from the fairway and blink right in the palm tree. And the palm tree is only about 4 feet wide, but it's thick. 100%, 110% of those balls are in there. I know it. And it's a lost ball. I just wish there's some way in certain situations where we're 100% sure I witnessed it go in that tree, that we could proceed under the unplayable ball rule and make it come down. Now I know there's other situations like if you fire it right into a thick palmetto bush on the ground, it's in there, you can't find it. What's your reference point? Up here you could kind of estimate. I know there's other things to work around, but that one's tough. But there's a lot of people smarter than me making these decisions. But that one's tough.
Yeah, the known and virtually certain. I think that language change from preponderance of evidence or whatever it was, or I can't even remember now. We're going to talk about that. Terminology changes in 2019, but yeah, that's a good point. So just for clarification, if I hit my ball and we just did a rules video on this one as well. We know it was in a leaves piled for removal that were right there. We all saw it go in there, but we can't find it. We have a reference point and we know it's known or virtually certain, 90% probability or whatever we use as a kind of a numeric gauge. I can proceed without penalty in that situation, but because it's 40 feet in the air or whatever, is that really how you'd have to rule in that situation? Because again, I would say, well, we know it's in there. Why can't we proceed? I'm with you. But I guess
we've had a couple. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
We've had a couple situations where we are allowed to. We had one in Boca Raton. In Naples, where a player hit a tee shot. It hit a cart path. Tons of spectators there. Jumped up in the air and blinked and stuck in the tree. And they never lost sight of the ball. They saw the ball, and when it stuck in the tree, they could still see the ball. That situation, we are allowed to treat it as known or virtually certain because we never lost sight of the ball. But the same situation, I think it happened at Torrey Pines too in the U.S. Open. The same situation, hits the cart path. We see it go up there and it disappears in the tree. Now it's a lost ball, even though we know it's in there. But they've given us the guidance that if you never lose sight of the golf ball, then you can treat it. You can treat it as known or virtually certain or as an unplayable because we never lost sight of the ball. But if it goes in there and you lose sight of the ball, even though it's in there, it's a lost ball.
Okay.
So
you wanted me to remind you of the lining the golf ball up. I want to hear this.
Well, it goes back to slow play. My rookie year in '86, and our media guy dug this up. I had totally forgotten. They gave us a end of the year survey about, what do you think of this? What do you think of the food in the locker room? What do you think? What's the thing that concerns you most on the PGA Tour? Me being a smart aleck little rookie wrote in red ink about 4-inch letters, slow play. That was 1986. So you can see where I stand on it.
Well, that makes me feel so. It is one of those hills I choose to die on. Where was I reading this just this morning? I think it was. I'm always on. I lose track, but it was somebody who's credible saying we should not go to a shot clock, and I am jumping down to pace of play since we're on it. I've been advocating that we should have a putting clock. At least think about it. I look at what baseball has done, and I posed this to Ken Tackett, and he pointed out some of the obvious challenges. You have multiple balls, in play all the time. It's not like a pitch clock. There's one ball, one clock. NBA, one ball, one clock. So what is your thoughts on a putting clock?
Well, it's funny you said that. You're a brilliant man, because that's what I thought of. Because when people say about a shot clock, I said, well, now you've got 3 balls, left side of fairway, right side of fairway, 1 in the trees. It's going to be very, very, very hard. Moving gallery out of the way. But on the putting green, once you're on the putting green, no one's in your way. When it's your turn. The putting green is the absolute best place to start, in my opinion. That you don't have to have somebody to run around the fairway like the European Tour did it, and they had 18 rules officials run around, on every hole, at least. But on the putting green, you could have one person. Okay, Ed, it's your turn. Go. Brian, it's your turn. Go. And to me, and that's where they piddle around and lose all their time. I think.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I'll be looking at my our Raguzzi, our time par sheet. Oh man, look, they got 6 minutes to get off the hole, and I'll start doing something. I'll look up, and they're still on the green, and I'm, what are they doing up there? So yeah, I think that would be the place to start. I really do.
Well, yeah, we're definitely like-minded on this one. I have a video from our Colorado Open, par 4, and they all hit the green in regulation. And I started a clock and just videotaped the whole thing. This hole took them 10 minutes to play. They played it quickly. And I think at least 4.5 minutes was on the green. So you think about they traveled 450 yards. So you think about this game where the object is to get the ball in the hole from the tee, and you think, well, what's going to take the longest time? Well, surely to get 450 yards, right? No, it's to make that 45 inches. That's where the time is taken. So let's shine the light on where the issue is. It because you've spent a lifetime or a career, 20-some years timing players, and where does the time get used on the green? And why wouldn't it be that way? That's where they make their money. That's where, it all comes to a head. So it seems like, and I'll tell you, it's funny, if you've watched any of the TGL golf and they have the shot clock up there, where are they taking timeouts? It's generally not on the tee shot.
On the tee shot.
On the green.
Exactly right. On the greens, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know, pace of play drives me crazy. But on that thought, we haven't done any favors, in my opinion, the way we mow golf courses now, because it seems like in the last 25 years, we've gone to all these runoff areas where back in the late 80s, early 90s, if you missed a green, there was usually a couple steps of rough where it would catch it. So you're just hitting a little flop. Now you're walking 40 feet down the hill, walking all the way up, walking all the way back down. And we've gotten greens so fast, Ed, as you know, all of a sudden, you hit your 20-footer, it goes zzz, and now something that you might be able to tap in is now 3.5 feet because the green's 13. So I don't think we've done any favors either, the way we do golf courses. I mean, you saw Pinehurst, if you miss it by 6 feet, you're 60 feet down the hill. That hasn't helped either. But the players are definitely slower now, no doubt about it. I watch it, and I don't know how to fix it, but they're slow at the college level. The coaches get in the middle. I watch all that, and it's something that needs to be fixed. I have so many friends say they can't stand watching it anymore. It just takes forever.
Well, it's definitely boiled up to a conversation where for many years it wasn't even something that was talked about. So my question there, and just to kind of put a pin in it, I said another big topic in the. I'm sorry, we'll go to that next. I said pace of play has been a major topic of conversation in professional golf. What is your view on this big topic? I'm glad to hear that we both have big red Sharpies in our response to that. So thank you, Brian. I feel like this has been good therapy for me.
Well, are you going to work the Senior Open at the Broadmoor this year?
I have retired. I have completely retired from rules officiating because, again, not to make it about I don't really enjoy rules officiating, to be perfectly honest. I find it to be tedious. I find it to be unrewarding. I don't get a lot out of it, honestly. I think I love the people. I love talking to you. And that was the part I really, really enjoyed. The pre-round chatter and the post-round chatter and comparing notes. But being on the golf course, it wasn't for me. So I'll gladly do something else that I can be useful. All right. The question I teased here just inadvertently. Let's talk about the rollback of the golf ball. And I know that I'm always sensitive on this one because I know you work for, a side of the game, and I work for a side of the game. And it's unfortunate to me that we've divided the game on this one, or at least it feels like we have. And I don't know why it's become. I mean, I guess I do know why. So anyway, before I just ramble, what are your thoughts on this topic?
My 2 cents is they waited too long. They're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube a little bit, in my opinion. It broke my heart watching St. Andrews when they're driving 4 par 4s now. And to me, they're just the home of golf. It's just, like I said, it breaks my heart. I see what they're trying to do. I looked at some numbers. What are they saying? The average tour pro with the longer guys are going to lose 13 to 15 yards or something like that. And the average amateur male is only going to lose 5. I see what they're doing. Is it too little too late? I don't know. I think it's a compromise. But you see these golf courses now that having to, like what they've done at Pebble now, every year I go, there's another tee back there because they're just hitting it so far. I think we've lost a lot of truly great golf courses that don't have room to expand because the ball got so far, and what was going so far, it seemed to be very quickly.
Yeah, totally agree. And again, it's a real challenge. And I think everybody, hindsight 2020, no doubt, there's a lot of things I think should have been done differently. The driver head size should have been limited because now that there was a little more premium on hitting it in a smaller sweet spot. Now there's just this huge, R&D thing down there. I jokingly say, if Bobby Jones came back and saw what was going on, he wouldn't even be sure what game this is. It looks like Fisher Price golf out there or something with these huge heads. I don't know. I get frustrated by the PGA Tour players who, and there was a recent one, and he was very public about it, Lucas Glover, saying that, totally against it, think it's terrible. Will mention that not something should have been done sooner. So, and you got to start somewhere. And I don't think you can just throw up your hands and say, well, there's so much complexity here. And I don't know. I don't envy the USGA.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not smart enough to know what the right, and it's one of those things, Ed, in golf, there's so many gray areas. I'm not sure there's a right or wrong. I see what they're doing. I really do. Because if it just keeps going, I hated it when the first solid Pro V1, the first solid ball came out, because the longer guys exponentially got 20 and I got 3, right. And because I didn't hit it very far. And that's what drove me crazy. And it sounds like with these numbers, it's still the same way. The mashers are going to get reined back a little bit more than the other guys. But I don't know what the right answer is. I really don't. I can't imagine it's going to make that big of a difference, because all these, these guys are playing par 68s now anyway. Every par 5 is reachable. I mean, Rory hit 7-iron into the 14th hole at Pebble Beach.
Pebble Beach. I saw that.
7-iron.
Yeah.
I used to hit driver forward wedge.
When Gary Woodland won the Open, he had forward in there. That was just a couple years ago. So no, granted, I know the setup is a little different, and but yeah, that caught my eye too. Well, my line on the rollback, or the way they've rolled it out, so to speak, it's like you get in trouble and your dad says, "Son, you shouldn't have done that. 7 years from now, I'm going to ground you for 30 minutes." I mean, it's like, it's such a small, tiny, and that's the thing. It's talk about much ado about nothing. I mean, who knows, by the time the rule comes into play, So, again, I know the USGA is getting as much criticism on that side as they are on the rollback. Is you're not doing enough. You were asleep at the wheel. So it's a tough one for sure. So
yeah, and manufacturers are pretty clever. Remember when they outlawed square grooves, and 2 years later they had wedges with V grooves that spun it more? I mean, they're pretty clever. They'll figure something out.
Well, so let's look at that through the lens of the Champions Tour. Are you seeing length kind of find its way into the, or is there still, is this not as big an issue on the Champions Tour as far as how far they're hitting it?
Not as big. I mean, we've got, Podrick Harrington, Ernie Els, Stuart Sink, some of these guys that still average 300 yards. Our average driving distance, and we're talking 50-plus-year-olds, is close to 280 now. And these guys are saying, hey, my average driving distance is longer than it was when I was, 25 or the same. So it's definitely made a difference. We play 7,000-yard golf courses every week. People think, the senior tour, we play 6,400. No, we don't. But it's because the average driving distance is almost 280, which is what it was, for these guys in their heyday. So I've definitely seen it. I sure have.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Bernhard Langer. I mean, you've watched this guy for a long time now. Were you officiating on the Champions Tour when Irwin was playing? No, you're probably, I'm not trying to make you too old here.
No, he was playing a little bit, but he didn't win when I was out there, but he was still hanging on, playing a little bit. But he stopped playing when I think he felt like he couldn't win. He didn't look around.
Well, I brought him up and Bernhard up for obvious reasons. Hale is our local hero. I mean, 6-time or whatever U.S. Open champion, won 3 U.S. Opens. Before Bernhard, the most prolific winner on the Champions Tour. What have you seen inside, up close? Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts and impressions of Bernhard Langer.
First off, Hale's a good friend. I've become a good friend with him. We trade emails all the time. Really respect Hale. Langer's incredible. He stays in unbelievable shape. When you grab his arm or fool around with him and give him a fake punch or something, he's hard as a rock. The competitiveness is crazy. He's just amazing. He's a surgeon on the golf course. He just figures it out. When he won the U.S. Open last year, it was up in Wisconsin somewhere, I think. I can't remember the name of the golf course. It was up north somewhere.
Century World. Right?
Century World.
Yeah.
I mean, he was hitting hybrids off the tees because they had these very bunkers that were very penal, and he kind of just figured out a way to get around and win the golf tournament. He's like a surgeon on the golf course. He doesn't overpower anything. It's funny. He's always saying to me, "You're making the golf courses longer, Brian." I said, "No, you're getting older, Bernhard." But he's incredible. He really is.
Yeah, I watched him at Sahalee. He would pace off in a practice run. It was during the tournament. He would pace off every hole from the back mode edge to the tee every single time and look at his book. And I'm like, on par 4s, par 5s, everyone. I was like, what is he doing? But there you go. That's what he's a surgeon.
He's so surgical. If there's a blade of grass on his golf ball, we've got mud on my ball. I think it drives him crazy that it might affect, 0.0001 or something. But he's just so surgical like that. Yeah, he's just, and Terry, his caddy, works harder than any caddy in the world. I think he knows every blade of grass and every putting green he plays. So, yeah,
I had at the Broadmoor Senior Open, I worked in the scoring, and I was accepting scorecards, and which was kind of fun. I did get to see some interesting things, and one of the things I saw was those two, particularly Terry, who was very vocal in his opinions. And at the USGA, I think they feel even more need to be vocal because there's this sort of chip on the shoulder of you're a bunch of amateurs who don't know what you're doing, whether it's hole locations or the speed of something or a setup. He was not bashful in sharing some of his thoughts.
He's that way out there too. And I'll just look at him and give him a look and, say, you got something to say, go through your player. Because Terry, I like you, I respect you, but I don't need 78 players and 78 caddies getting on me too. That's 2 for 1, come on, anyway.
So before we leave Bernhard, as somebody who played elite golf, played the PGA Tour, was the 86 Rookie of the Year. I want to make sure I.
86.
That's amazing. It's a good trivia question. Who is the PGA Tour Rookie of the Year in 1986? And people say, that sounds like Davis Love. Nope. Yes, again. Bernhard Langer's golf swing. I watched that swing, and again, I'm not a student of the golf swing, and he has. It's just there's a lot going on, particularly after impact.
His follow through's gotten a little. I don't know your words are yippy, but his follow through has gotten a little odd lately.
Yeah, and I guess it just shows you once you hit the ball,
doesn't matter, does it?
Doesn't really matter anymore, does it? So
what I like about his swing is he brings it back, and the club almost comes out in front of him straight down. So he's always making good contact on the ball. Guys that struggle, I think, at the high level get it behind him. But he's right on top of it. And but like you said, as soon as that ball's gone, he could do a cartwheel for all I care. But we'll look at Scotty Scheffler's footwork. But yeah, he's his follow through's gotten a little funky, but the ball's long gone.
Who has the best golf swing you've ever seen in all the years you've been playing? You're like, if I could have a golf swing, that's it.
Well, in Tiger's heyday, I thought it was pretty flawless. Jeff Sluman. Do you remember Jeff Sluman?
Oh yeah.
What a great simple golf swing. Elkington had a great swing. Now you turn on the TV, they all look perfect to me, except for that bowed left wrist. I can't figure that out.
Yeah.
We always tried to get it like that.
Yeah.
It seems to be weird for these guys. But I would say Elkington, Tiger in his heyday was just so simple, just straight back and straight through. And I always liked Jeff Sluman's swing.
Did you try to emulate any swing in particular when you were playing, or as a kid growing up?
I did not. I got into Ledbetter before Ledbetter was anybody. I was working with him when it was the Andy Bean Golf Studio at Greenleaf West in the early 80s. And I never really did. I just I did get hung up in golf swing instead of hitting the golf ball, which hurt me a little bit. But no, I never really did, because I thought Nicklaus was the greatest player ever, but he had the old. I don't think you could emulate that. He was just a hell of an athlete.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, so as we wrap here, the final question, and thank you again, Brian, for taking the time. This has been a blast. Maybe we'll do it again. What do you think young players could learn by watching the Champions Tour generation?
How quickly we get on with it. I don't know if you know, but we started using DMDs on our tour. Mm-hmm. Pack wanted to give it a shot, and so we're using them now. I'm not so sure, Ed. It helps the pace of play because they'll get their number and they whip out their book, because there's too much in there. What's the run out on the fairway? What's the cover on that bunker? So they're always going to do that. But anyway, just how they get on with it. Most of our guys, we've got our slow players, but we don't have a slow tour. They get on with it. They get their number, they look once, twice, and they go. Your first impression is usually correct. The more you sit there and throw grass up and second guess yourself, I think you're going to hit the wrong club as many times or more than when you just trust your instinct and go. And I think that's what you'll notice from the Ernie Els of the world and the Retief Goosens and these guys that just get on with it.
How does that also apply on the putting green?
Yeah. These guys have always used their eyes. We do have some guys aim pointing, and I'd love to see the stats, because I don't think anybody makes any more putts, because as you know, the most important thing is hitting it in the sweet spot of the putter. Because if you don't, your speed's off, your line's off, everything. That's what everyone should work on. But most of them do. We do have some guys that do, Bernhard Langer does the four corners. I figured out, what does he do? If I figured 8 squats a hole times 18 holes, it's 120 squats. Unless he makes the first putt. He's got the strongest thighs on the planet. But they get on with it everywhere. They really do. And we get on them real quick. If they're a minute over time par, they're going to see us if the hole's open. So, but they get on with it. Yeah, they really do.
So, quick story about Hale Irwin that you'll appreciate. So he sponsored one of our local AJGA events for several years, and a couple of times he was able to come in and do a clinic. And one year we had him at Common Ground, and we had all the 120 some kids there and parents, and they're all around the green. And I'm doing a little dog and pony with Hale, and we're talking about his career and having him hit a couple shots. So I put a ball down about 8 feet from the hole, and I said, Hale, you made a lot of clutch putts in your life to win big tournaments. Walk us through your thought process on this putt. And he kind of looked at me and he said, I'd rather see one of these young kids do it. So a very brave young man raised his hand and said, I'll do it. So he comes out there. First thing he does, he puts a mark behind the ball and he starts doing the alignment, starts getting that line. So Hale interrupts him with a smile on his face. And he said, so what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm lining up my golf ball. He said, oh, so you're slow. And poor kid, yeah. So he went ahead and continued. He said, no, go ahead. So, of course, the kid does his whole routine and misses the putt. So Hale says, how about a round of applause for this brave young man? And then he says, all right, first of all, don't line up the ball. He said, I want to see if there was a ball with no lines on it, nothing, that would be my preference, just white. This is a ball. We're trying to roll it. This is not a line, it's a roll. And he said, don't look at it from both sides. He said, if I were to pour water on the screen, which way is the water going? It's going to go that way. I know it's right edge. And he said, no practice swings, just get over it, trust it. And of course he buried it right in the middle. He'd set it up where he was going to have to make that putt or he'd look pretty foolish. So.
Yeah, because if you think about it, when you watch, Bob Rotella used to say putt like a kid, right? You watch kids before this lining up thing, they just look and go. One look and go. And that's how Davis loved putt his whole life. One look and the putt would be going back when he got his head back. Yeah. And I think if you miss, you feel like you're not trying, but I think that's the best way to putt. You're on the putting green, you're not lining it up, you're just looking and hitting, and then all of a sudden we get on the golf course and we got to four corner it. I don't know. I think we need to putt like kids used to, just look and go.
I like it. That's a good place to end. We're all kids, right? And life's a lot more fun if you look at it that way. Well, Brian, speaking of being, I've been like a kid here in a candy store with you for the last 50 some minutes. Thanks for joining. And we'll be looking for you on the Champions Tour, shaking your head when you watch somebody do aim point.
Come down to the Broadmoor, guy.
I'll definitely will. All right. Okay. Thanks, Brian.